Hey, good evening. I'm really happy to have you here. My name is Daniel. I was a professional opera singer and beatboxer, and tonight we're going to be listening to the music of the night from Phantom of the Opera, performed by Dan Vasc. So this one was a donation request from Judith W, so I really wanted to jump on this as fast as I could. Anybody that donates to me is just... I'm still just so stunned that people would actually invest in this. You know, I really didn't even think that the channel would grow as much as it has, and that you guys would just be so supportive of me and the channel. So I can't express my gratitude, not just towards the people who have donated, but to everyone who takes the time out of their day to watch these videos. You know, I know that most, if not all of us, just have very busy lives and are constantly just doing everything we can to either make ends meet or to just keep grinding out day in and day out, and to have some solace in having some kind of human experience with someone else, even if it's through technology. You know, I think that that's ultimately a pretty beautiful thing, and I can't express my gratitude for all of you being here and watching these videos with me. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I'm so excited to keep reacting to Dan. His voice is it's just so captivating to listen to. He's a remarkable artist. I love his energy, his performance technique, his style. And again, his voice is just stellar, dude. It's just so good. I love listening to his take on different songs throughout either different series or his own interpretation of specific music. And now that we're jumping into Phantom of the Opera, something that I want to let everybody know is that Phantom of the Opera is not an opera, it is a musical. Just because opera is in the title does not mean that it is an opera. It is a musical. I really like Phantom of the Opera as a story. I think the Phantom is a really interesting character. As I've mentioned before in one of the other Andrew Lloyd Webber Dan Vasc videos, I've been so overly exposed to Andrew Lloyd Webber's music, especially in high school. So I had a really strong burnout from his music. But after hearing Dan's interpretation of it, not to necessarily say that it's really reignited my passion for Andrew Lloyd Webber's music, but I'm more excited to engage with that music through Dan's interpretation of it specifically. So I'm really excited to jump into this piece, and I hope you guys are as well. So without any further delay, let's just jump into it.
Nighttime sharpens, heightens each sensation. Darkness stirs and wakes imagination. Silently the senses abandon their defenses.
Here we go.
Slowly, gently,
nice.
night unfurls its splendor. Grasp it, sense it, tremulous and tender. Turn your face away from the garish light of day. Turn your thoughts away from cold, unfeeling light, and listen to the music of the night.
Nice.
Close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams. Purge your thoughts of the life you knew before. Close your eyes, let your
So tender.
spirit start to soar.
Beautiful, dude.
And you live as you've never lived before. Softly, deftly, music music shall caress you. Hear it, feel it, secretly possess you. Open up your mind, let your fantasies unwind in this darkness that you know you cannot fight. The darkness of the music of the night. Let your mind start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the life you knew before.
Aw, dude.
Let your soul take you where you long to be.
Ah.
Only then can you belong to me.
Oh, that intensity, dude.
Floating, falling, sweet intoxication. Touch me, trust me, savory sensation. Let the dream begin. Let your darker side give in to the power of the music that I write. The power of the music of the night.
Still in the character, too.
You alone can make my song take flight.
Oh, dude.
Help me make the music of the night.
Ah! Ah, my gosh. Ugh. Yes, yes. So something that I absolutely have to comment on because it is one of the most challenging things to do in music. And I had the absolute biggest problem with this in my first few years of vocal lessons. It was so arduously difficult for me to get over this hurdle. And I was practicing it constantly, and he just nailed it right here. When your voice needs to sustain through piercing dissonance and not go sharp or flat, not modulate your voice in the slightest, it needs to maintain right in the middle of the pitch as the orchestra is now creating this piercing dissonance around you. And for you to keep sustaining that and not fall into the trap of trying to match with the orchestra, dude, it is so much more difficult than people make it out to be. The moment that the orchestra actually does end up matching you again after their dissonance, it's the most heavenly feeling having this straight tone where it was aligned, and then the orchestra goes into this dissonance and it starts perverting the sound and it becomes very uncomfortable, but you still feel this purity in that darkness as it's just being sustained. And then the orchestra actually matches the vocalist again, and now they're just on this perfect same wavelength right at the finishing ending chord. It's just, oh dude, it's just so magical. And he just absolutely nailed that. When I was beginning vocal lessons, I was given a pretty simple vocal piece, but the accompaniment under me was in consistent contrast with the leading vocal line. And only in very key moments did the accompaniment with the vocal line come together in this really beautiful harmony. But I actually ended up having to scrap the piece, even though I worked on it for over a year. And that's a long time to be working on one particular piece. And I still ended up scrapping it. Eventually later in my vocal career, I picked it up again and I started performing it after I became a much better musician. But man, at that time I was so frustrated. I just couldn't keep consistent on my own notes regardless of how well I knew it, because getting over that mental hurdle of wanting your voice to match with the orchestra, because that's a skill in and of itself, to match with the orchestra, having so much vocal control to match someone else, that's really tough in and of itself. But to have so much power and confidence in your own vocal line to not fall into the trap of matching the orchestra, dude, that is so arduously difficult that people don't give enough credit for. It is so tough to do that. And the fact that Dan just did that so perfectly at the very end, it was so beautifully sustained. Just this perfect straight tone that just transformed very gently into this lovely vibrato at the end and didn't fall into that trap of matching the orchestra. Oh, dude, I got chills from that. Just from that one section alone, let alone the rest of the piece. There were a lot of very wonderful choices that he did. I do have a couple of criticisms in terms of the way that he approached a couple of his cadences. But honestly, overall, this was so well executed, playing the role of the Phantom. The Phantom is not an easy role to perform or execute by any means. I most certainly can't do it since my voice is more suited towards constantly spinning vibrato, and I have a very difficult time performing straight tones very well. So musical theater isn't necessarily my preferred genre of choice when singing. So singing the Phantom isn't necessarily something that I can do, but I can definitely appreciate when another vocalist is more capable and more able to approach it in such a way that's just, it's just magnificent, dude. I just love so many elements that Dan incorporated into his own rendition of it, and I'm just so excited to jump into this analysis, so let's just do that. Nighttime. Right in the beginning. Night. Where he starts on this N and grows into the vowel. It doesn't just go night, where he could have done that, but having that N lead in to grow, you just immediately, off the very first consonant of the first word, you just immediately feel this wave-like motion instead of this more clean-cut entrance onward. And the clean-cut entrance onward isn't a bad choice by any means, but to set the tone immediately on the first consonant shows a very great level of practice and great recognition of what tone you immediately want to tell the audience. So instead of going nighttime, nighttime, it's a huge difference, but it's so subtle at the same time, and it's a really great effect. I love it. Nighttime sharpen. Yeah, just the way that it's not so heavy. It's still at this mezzo piano dynamic, or medium soft to soft dynamic volume. And it's just, it's vocalized, it's well supported, but it doesn't feel heavy. It's very light, and I love that. Nighttime sharpens, heightens each sensation. Darkness stirs and wakes imagination. Silently the senses abandon. Yeah, so the break there is really good. Silently the senses abandon. Like, could you do this entire line on one breath? You could. Silently the senses abandon their defenses. And you could do that on one breath, but having that break, it doesn't necessarily cut the line in this particular instance, but it creates more intensity on the word abandon, which is a very critical word in this particular musical cadence. So the fact that he does stress abandon a little bit more to even further emphasize the importance of the word, I think that that's a really great choice there. Silently the senses abandon their Yeah, and on a stage or just from a classical perspective, you wouldn't really constrict your vocal cords of a band. You would just typically want to keep that a lot more open. But honestly, just his interpretation of this, like I was mentioning, that stress on abandon, I personally actually really enjoy. So I think that's a really good stylistic choice that Dan incorporates a little bit of himself into this character.
Abandon
Yeah.
fences.
These little smirks, still really harboring this character in such a way. Love it.
Slowly, gently.
Oh yeah, gently. It's very easy for gently to have no T in it, like I just spoke it. Gently. Gently. Where there's a glottal, gently kind of thing. But to have that T be so crisp, yeah, it feels much more full when you add that crisp T in there. I love that.
Slowly, gently, night unfurls its splendor. Grasp it.
I really love the intensity that he's giving on grasp it. Grasp it. I really dig that intensity. Traditionally, you would still want to have that intensity, but not make it so breathy of grasp it instead of grasp it. The breathiness feels more intense, which is why I feel like Dan actually chooses to do that here. But in a more traditional sense, you would want to vocalize that a little bit more. But that being said, it is still a stylistic choice, and I really do love the intensity of that breathiness there. So, you know, I dig it. I dig it.
Its splendor, grasp it, sense it, tremulous and tender.
Oh, and just the way he ends that. Tender. It just tapers so gently, dude. It's so lovely. Let's listen to that again.
Tremulous and tender.
Oh.
Turn your face away from the carriage.
Ah, dude. This isn't necessarily a loud dynamic. You feel a growth in it, absolutely. But it's still not like at a forte or a loud volume, loud dynamic. So to have this level of intensity still concentrated in this mezzo forte or this medium loud dynamic, it's so nice, dude.
Turn your face away from the garish light of day.
And he's still tapering these phrases so delicately, too, even regardless of this growing intensity that you feel is just expanding this concentrated energy. Ah, dude, it's so cool.
From the garish light of day, turn your thoughts away from cold.
Oh, and it's just so smooth here. It still doesn't feel really constrained or concentrated, even though it is. It doesn't feel like it is. And that's really tough to execute, to create that kind of sensation.
Day, turn your thoughts away from cold, unfeeling love.
Unfeeling. Just that gentle slide. Oh, yeah, dude. Love that effect.
Thoughts away from cold, unfeeling light.
And light just, from that slide, you just go, unfeeling light. And you just have that closed slide down until it just bursts ever so gently into light. And that is so pinnacle, too, on the word light in and of itself. It just creates this mental imagery of, like, I don't know if any of you guys have ever played Kingdom Hearts before, but at the very ending when all of the worlds are returning to their natural state and you just see these small balls of light falling from the sky like snowflakes, that's what it visually feels like to me. It's just watching these small balls of this very gentle, subtly muted yellow light just falling from the sky very gently and just lighting the world around you. Oh, dude. It's just so delicate, but yet you can tell that there's so much support and strength happening underneath that superficial layer of delicacy. It's so lovely.
From cold, unfeeling light.
And his vibrato is so gentle there. I love it.
From cold, unfeeling light. And listen.
Yeah. I would have preferred to have a very gentle T at the end of that. Light. Instead of light. Like, I don't think it's wrong to exclude the T or to close it without making the T consonant, but with everything that he's done so far in terms of how clean his diction has been, to exclude the T feels ever so slightly off to me, because he's just been so consistent with this diction that to have the light and to have that T just carry you through, I think that would have gone a lot farther than just going light. It just feels ever so slightly incomplete to me without the T. But that being said, I don't fault him by any means for excluding it. I would have just personally preferred to have that very gentle, delicate T to have concluded light there.
Unfeeling light. And listen to the music of the night.
I love the growth in that phrase. And listen to the music of the night. Oh yeah, just that growth and expansion Dan did there. It was so tender. Let's listen to that again.
And listen to the music of the night.
And it's so big on night too. Because to me, when night falls, it feels so much more like you're enveloped by the universe, because you see the stars, you see the moon. In some places you can see galaxies and just really take in the absolute beauty of the limitless expansiveness of the universe. And to have night just grow and be so big in this phrase, it just gives you that sensation of just being outside, lying on the ground, looking straight up at the night sky, and just feeling that expansiveness of the night caress your body. It's just such a surreal feeling. I love it so much.
The music, and listen to the music of the night.
Oh.
Close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams. Purge your thoughts of the life you knew before.
Yeah, and this growing intensity, especially on these musical sentences and cadences. Oh, I love this growth. I love this feeling of expansiveness, especially on your darkest dreams and purging. Oh, these are very intense words and intense thoughts and emotions that are supposed to arise out of you. So to keep growing through these cadences is really critical, and he's doing a really great job of handling that.
Thoughts of the life you knew before.
And his hand gesture there, it didn't feel tense. It was very loose and free. So you could still feel a lot of that looseness and lack of constriction in his body. And that's a really good choice too. Because when you're singing, you don't want to have tension in your body, or you want to have as little tension in your body as possible. So breathing is a lot easier, and you can vocalize your breath much easier without tension either in your legs, in your arms, in any of your appendages, or in any part of your body. Because singing is a full body experience. From the soles of your feet to the crown of your head, your entire body is engaging in breath, in vocalized breath, in the way you execute that breath. And to release the tension in your body as much as possible is very critical. But that doesn't mean that you should just stand completely still. You're still allowed to move, but you should do so very fluidly, to not clench fists or to make jagged movements, because that does cause a lot of tension in your body. But to have that fluid motion and still maintain that intensity in your face, yeah, dude, that's remarkable performance technique.
Your darkest dreams, purge your thoughts of the life you knew before.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he's really clenching. It's more like a close, not a clench. And I really appreciate that.
Thoughts of the life you knew before.
Yeah. Oh, and how delicate he is from that you knew before. Close. Just to have that delicate sound after that more expanded, intense energy. It's so great having that level of control there. I love that.
You knew before.
Yeah. It just matches the orchestra so well. Yes. His breath there was actually pretty good. I would typically want that musical sentence to be done on one breath. But that being said, since soar is such a delicate note, just to have a very confident level of support to approach such a delicate note for such a long period of time is so important. I can't stress that enough. People might be under the impression that you need more support the louder or more intense your voice gets, but it's actually the opposite, where the more delicate, the more soft a note is, the more support you need for that, because you need that to be very consistent. Where if I were to sing a really powerful note of just using the word soar, for example, soar, in comparison to, but still having that same intensity, but on a smaller dynamic, we're taking that big energy, that big expansive energy, and still maintaining that energy, but in a much more concentrated, targeted state of soar. You still feel that level of intensity, but it's not being demeaned by any way from a lack of breath or a lack of support. That support is still just as big as if you were singing it at a fortissimo dynamic or an immensely loud dynamic or volume. You still maintain that level of support and energy, but it's now so much more controlled and concentrated, and it coalesces into this targeted beam of kamehameha kind of thing, where in this intensity is a power, a strength, and the way that he approaches soar here is exactly what I want to hear from this type of musical sentence. Yeah. And it's just so delicate too, but it's still so supported. I love it. It's so big. Like, can you guys feel how big this note is? It's just enormous, dude. Oh, it's just so expansive, like the universe, that note. I gotta keep hearing this.
It's time to and you live as you've never lived before.
Yeah. On Before, I love this level of intensity that he brings to this musical sentence. I would prefer to have it be just ever so slightly more vocalized. Like, let's listen to that again.
Never lived before.
Before. Instead of before. I think having that breathiness, again, more contributes to the intensity of the vocal line, which I, again, definitely respect as a stylistic choice. But I think you can still maintain a near exact level of intensity if you vocalized it a little bit more. And just personally, the more you vocalize something and the less breathy something sounds, the more subtext in its power, in its concentrated power, I personally feel. That might not be the case for all the audience. It might only be the case for me, honestly. But if you can vocalize it a little bit more, it gives me more of a subconscious feeling like there is so much more vocal control, keeping a very soft dynamic without it being breathy, but still fully vocalized and supported. And just having a stronger Kamehameha beam just firing from this very concentrated beam of this heavenly light that is Dan's voice.
You've never lived.
But I love the fact that he had that very gentle D on lived. Lived. Instead of live. It's not live, it's lived. Having that very gentle D adds so much because you can ride that D onto before. Lived before. It just kind of launches you instead of live, where it feels like a fall off. That D kind of throws you into the air and allows you to catch onto before instead of falling off and hitting before again. But that's just my mental imagery. Everybody is subject to their own, of course.
You lived as you've never lived before.
Yeah, dude. Oh, and I love this intensity.
Deathly music shall caress you. Hear it, feel it, secretly possess you.
Lovely.
Open up your mind, let your fantasies unwind.
And I love this too. So typically in classical music, you would want to hold on to vowels as long as possible and clip consonants at the very tail end of the note. Like for the word fantasies. Fantasies. Obviously, I'm not singing fantasies in the context just in terms of the word in and of itself. But you would hold on to those vowels as long as possible and just clip the consonants at the very tail end of the note. So the fact that he actually closes onto the N of fant, yeah, just having that intensity in the consonant while still honoring the vowel in and of itself, having that nice, open, lovely space. He does such a great job mixing traditional styles of music with his own style of singing, which really exemplifies his uniqueness as an artist and how he chooses to engage with music in a way that's so richly and authentically himself. And not to say that other artists are incapable of doing this. I have heard other artists do similar ideas, but in the way that Dan approaches his music and his own style of singing, it's just so uniquely his own. And I really just can't help but respect that from one musician to another. I love it so much.
Your mind, let your fantasies unwind in this darkness that you know you cannot find. The darkness of the music of
not grinding, it feels like a wrong word, but just driving that knife into the word. Oh, it's just, you just feel that twist and push. I'm having such a difficult time expressing my felicity on this particular cadence for some reason. So let's just listen to it again.
No, you cannot find the darkness of the music of
Yeah, dude, it just feels so satisfying. It's like, this is gonna sound juvenile, but you know those child toys where you put the circle piece in the circle hole and the triangle piece in the triangle hole, but it just fits so perfectly because it was designed to fit that specific shape in that specific hole, and it's just richly satisfying. Very similarly to, you have a coloring book and you're just coloring so perfectly in the lines, and it just comes together to form something really beautiful. Just having that satisfying feeling, just having that just feeling that ever so satisfying texture. Oh, it's so lovely, dude. I love it.
the darkness.
Same thing with darkness. The darkness. It just, this entire phrase is just so satisfying.
Cannot find.
And again, having a little bit of that T to connect the next musical cadence in fight. I would have preferred to have a little bit more of that T instead of just fight. Yeah. Especially since the next word is the. Having that T go into the TH, it would have been a much smoother connecting thread. I'm not going to be too butthurt about that. It's still very lovely, and it is the end of a sentence into a new musical sentence. To connect it a little bit more, I think would have been a stronger choice, but again, I think it's fine. Especially with how satisfying this next phrase is, so.
No, you cannot fight the darkness of the music of the night.
Yeah, and it just carries that same idea of the expansiveness of the universe, the expansiveness of night, and just growing in the word night. Like, the musical phrase itself already grows, but especially the word night, just having that growth happen around you. It's that same sensation I was mentioning earlier, and it's so well executed.
Music of the night.
Woo!
Let your mind start to journey through a strange new world.
And very similarly to the orchestra, we're in this huge new space to play around in, but he still doesn't lose that wave-like smooth texture. It doesn't feel jagged or rocky with this new space. Just because we're in a new space doesn't mean you need to lose any of that tenderness or wave-like structure in your voice. It's just at a much more large dynamic because he has more room and more space to play around in. But it's so controlled, and I love this.
Start to journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the life you knew before.
Beautiful deceptive cadence there. Executed it very well.
Of the life you knew before.
Yeah!
Let your soul take you where you long to be.
There is nothing that I can say that can make that note any more perfect than it was executed. This is a note that I would have to warm up in my chest voice in a long warm-up process. I'm talking minimum 45 minutes. To be honest, I think I would still have a challenging time hitting that kind of note and sustaining it and keeping it as rich and round and robust as Dan is making it here. So my voice is a little bit lower than his. Dan is a more lyric baritone or a lighter, slightly higher baritone. Not quite to like a baritenor or tenor level, but I'm closer to a bass baritone, even though my vocal range is still baritone. So even though our ranges are a little bit different, just the fact that he can just approach this note, keep it so expansive, not have his voice crack at all. And this is a common misconception with vocal cracking, where people think that if your voice cracks, then you're an inexperienced singer, or you just didn't practice hard enough. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. I remember I saw a recital once of a colleague of mine, and he was a remarkable vocalist. He was the understudy for one of the lead roles when we performed Carmen, and I performed with him in several other operas as well. And he has this beautiful tenor voice, a beautiful tenor voice. And when I heard his recital, he was coming off of being sick, and in almost every song he was cracking. And it was just so tough to hear, because cracking only occurs when your body doesn't have enough support on notes. And it doesn't necessarily just mean for high notes. Vocal cracking can happen anywhere, even in the comfortable areas of your voice. And obviously, it's more likely to happen in more challenging areas of your range to sing in, because you need more support the more you push the boundaries of your range. But that being said, it's just so difficult when you're singing in this upper register of your voice to create the still, smooth, wave-like texture and not make it feel as though you're straining or constricting your voice in any way. It still feels very round. The vibrato is still very consistent. To the audience, it sounds like you have just as much vocal control as if you were just singing in the very middle of your chest voice, just in this complete comfortable zone, but you are in this more challenging zone of your range. So just this approach here, this vibrato, this consistency, this everything, it's just this dynamic, it's just so well executed. There is nothing I can say to him that can make that any more well executed. He just extricated himself from any bonds that he might have and just let his voice fly. And that's wonderful. I loved that sensation, which is exactly why we're going to listen to it again.
Let your soul take you where you long to be. Only then can you belong.
Yeah, so now we're in a little bit less of a traditional style where it would be only then can, and you would still be vocalizing it. You would still have this beautiful resonance to your voice, but instead here, he's considerably more breathy to add that intensity. He adds in a little bit of this vocal fry on can. And this is a little bit of that internal metal feeling he's so adjusted to slipping through a little bit. And I really still dig this intensity, and it makes him unique as an artist in his approach to this piece. So ultimately, I still really dig it. I love this performance. It's not what you would do traditionally. But that being said, it's still chef's kiss.
Only then can you belong to me. Floating,
And then back into this wave-like structure. Love it.
falling, sweet intoxication. Touch me, trust me, savory sensation. Let the dream begin. Let your darker side give in to the power of the music that I write. The power of
Ah, yeah. The power. Very still falling in line with that satisfying metaphor I was structuring earlier, the circle and the circle piece kind of thing, where it's just so audibly satisfying. Let's listen to that again.
the power
Ah-ha-ha!
of the music of the
Yeah.
alone can make my song take flight.
In that entire period where he wasn't singing, his face was down, his eyes were down, and he's still maintaining this intensity of the music he's in, and he still has the world built around him, and we can still experience the world around him. But especially in those moments where he isn't singing, I would have still preferred to have him look directly out at us. And I wouldn't mind a couple of moments where he does look down, even though that entire time he was looking down and we were still feeling the intensity. Maybe just one or two times of looking down, but I really want to engage with him more in that period where he isn't singing. I want to look into his soul, his eyes, and feel that with him. This entire piece is something that we need to feel a deep emotional connection with him. This is the Phantom, right? This is a character who's tortured and is more or less just pouring out his heart right now. And like, I want to feel every ounce of that emotional strain. I want to share in this beauty. I want to share in this suffering. I want to share in every emotion and everything that he's building in this world. I want to share in it. And I can't really fully experience that if his head is down. Even though I can still feel the intensity and still feel the world that he's built, keep me fully engaged. Don't disconnect from me at any point, please. I really want to keep engaging with this in you, and I can't do that if your eyes are down. I can't do that if your face is down. I understand that you're shying away because that's a deliberate, intentional choice. But man, dude, just as someone who deeply wants to sympathize, and even on some levels, empathize, I just want to be able to feel that. So please let me. Yeah, that tea there. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh my gosh. It was just very gently touched. Flight. Oh, it was so delicate. And you just still felt the tea. And it just allowed to carry over and to help. Oh, dude, just...
Some take flight. Help me make the music of the night.
Yeah. And this straight tone, dude. Oh, into this beautiful vibrato. Ah! And just into this beautiful vibrato. Ah! Oh my gosh, dude, that was so well done. Dan is such a unique artist, and his personal take on music is just so stellar, and it's chef's kiss, man. He really executed that well. Absolutely loved that interpretation. Really, really digged it. Thank y'all so much for watching this video. If you guys liked it, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you didn't like it, please leave a dislike and let me know why in the comments below. I do read all of the comments, even if I may not heart or reply to all of them, so please just know that your comments do not go unnoticed, and I do take them into further consideration as I make future videos. I'm still making a lot of content for Patreon, and I know it's going to be worth it the moment it's launched, so I really appreciate your patience and kindness in this regard. My live streams are currently Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That is subject to change, but that is what it is right now, so thank you so much for stopping by and joining me there. And if you guys haven't been there, I leave all of the recordings up on YouTube, so you're more than welcome to check those out as well. You're more than welcome to stop by, say hey, ask me any questions about myself, about the channel, pretty much whatever you guys would like to talk about, I'll be there for you. I can't tell you how grateful I am that all of you are here watching these videos with me. It really does mean a lot to me, and I can't wait to see all of you in the next video. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone.